Hello and welcome to my channel. Welcome to this little cozy corner of the internet where I talk about books, life, and a few cute stationery hauls and take you along with me in my little life. Today, friends, foes, enemies, foes, I don't know, whoever is watching, I have a lovely little book recommendation haul for you, right? So it's a set of 5 books, but each of the books has to be savored individually to get the full depth, dimension, taste, and flavor of the book. Okay, so these are my top 5 favorite books of all time. We're going to begin. Okay, ignore the person who's trying to sell their kulfis because it's summer season right now. So anyways, the first book that we're going to begin with is, let's begin with a short book. It's the shortest of all. It's called The Prophet by Khalil Gibran, and it is perhaps one of the most beautiful books I have read in my whole entire life. So it is like a compilation of short musings on life, love, death, houses, children, marriage, happiness, and a few things that you might consider as some of the most pivotal points in your life. I will read the blurb out for you. This is 128 pages in all, and I'll read out the blurb for you, right? A book of poetic essays written in English, Khalil Gibran's The Prophet is full of religious inspirations. I would beg to differ. This book is more spiritual than religious. It is not a set of moral conducts. It is not a set of ethical rules and values that you need to follow. It is more so a free-flowing, spontaneous overflow of emotions, realizations, and thoughts, but in the most beautiful way possible. I'll read to you a couple of things, right? So I don't know if YouTube will kind of ban this or not, but there are beautiful, authentic raw illustrations. So this musing is upon pain, right? I'll read it to you. And a woman spoke, saying, "Tell us of pain." And he said, "Your pain is the breaking of the shell that encloses your understanding." That is true. It's relatable. It's very relatable. At least I found it very relatable, the entire book. Even as the stone of the fruit must break, that its heart may stand in the sun, so must you know pain. And could you keep your heart in wonder at the daily miracles of life, your pain would not seem less wondrous than your joy. And you would accept the seasons of your heart, even as you always have accepted the seasons that pass over your fields. And you would watch the serenity through the winters of your grief. Much of your pain is self-chosen. It is the bitter portion by which the physician within you heals your sick self. Therefore, trust this physician and drink his remedy in silence and tranquility. For his hand, though heavy and hard, is guided by the tender hand of the unseen. And the cup he brings, though it burns your lips, has been fashioned by the clay which the potter has moistened with his own sacred tears. Tell me this is not the most beautiful couple of lines that you've heard. It's wonderful. I will try to read. Okay, freedom. I will read you a portion, right? And an orator said, "Speak to us of freedom." And he answered, at the city gate and by your fireside, I have seen you prostrate yourself and worship your own freedom. even as slaves humble themselves before a tyrant and praise him though he slays them. Yea, in the grove of the temple and in the shadow of the citadel, I have seen the freest among you wear their freedom as a yoke and a handcuff. And my heart bled within me, for you can only be free when even the desire of seeking freedom becomes a harness to you, and when you cease to speak of freedom as a goal and a fulfillment. You shall be free indeed when your days are not without a care, nor your nights without a want and a grief, but rather when these things girdle your life, and yet you rise above them naked and unbound. And how shall you rise beyond your days and nights unless you break the chains which you at the dawn of your understanding have fastened around you at the noon hour? In truth, that which you call freedom is the strongest of these chains, though its slings glitter in the sun and dazzle your eyes. That is The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. It's one of the most profound books I've ever read, and yet it's one of the most beautiful books I've ever read. And it's not very difficult to read, might be difficult to understand for some of you. In that case, you can just skip it and come to this book. It's called, I hope you can see this, it's called The Golden Years, The Many Joys of Living a Good Long Life by Ruskin Bond. Now let's talk about Ruskin Bond as an author first. So he has been a very, how do I say this? He's been a very famous author for a long time. And at the same time, he's been such a simple, uncomplicated, unproblematic, just a very simple little human who lives among the hills of Mussoorie and captures the beauties of life so beautifully through his words. I think it's the simplicity of his writings that brings his writings almost to life, makes it almost visceral. He does not use complicated and verbose metaphors or imagery. There's a little bit of imagery, of course, but no elaborate figures of speech or rhyming, archaic language, ornamental vocabulary, and yet it is this simplicity that captures the beauty of life among the hills, according to me. I have read a lot of his books. I have not read his first book, but I've read a lot of his books. In fact, this morning, I happened to be reading one of his books. It's called A Book of Simple Living by Ruskin Bond. And this is not my first time reading it. That should say something about my liking that I have towards this man. He's 90, I believe, right now, living amongst the hills of Mussoorie. And he's living a good damn life, right? And this is another testimony to the life that he's lived. I have read this yesterday for the second time, and this still remains to be one of my most favorite books. It's snippets of realizations from an 89-year-old man's life, right? He lives in Landour, Mussoorie. I'll read to you some of the parts. Yeah. It's more like his realizations that he has collected by living for 89 years. It's so beautiful. I'll read to you this page. It's called Grow Something. And again, every page is like very short. It's 2 pages of writing for one realization. And there are like 100 realizations that he has. On friendship, on growth, on love, or just maybe a little squirrel who eats from his hands in the morning by his window. There's just so much beauty in his writings. He mostly writes about nature, love, passion, hobbies. It's amazing. I'm going to read you something. Grow something. If you are alone and with nothing to do, just grow something. Plant a seed, wait patiently for it to sprout, experiencing the delight of watching a green shoot spring up from the soil, and take care of that little sapling as though it was a child of your own, which it is since you planted the seed. Take pride in its progress as it grows to maturity, producing foliage, flowers, and fruits. Last year, I planted a pea in a small earthen pot, just a tiny dried up pea. I kept the pot on my bedroom's windowsill where I received an hour or 2 of sunlight every morning. Nothing happened for a fortnight. Then one day, when I was not looking, up popped a couple of emeralds, two small green leaves. I was thrilled. I felt like a writer who had just finished writing a long story, something that I have also done on a few occasions. Anyway, I watered and nurtured that pea plant over a couple of months until it gave me several small flowers. Not sweet peas, but pretty in their own way, and then pea pods enclosing a number of green peas. I tasted one of them. It was sweet and succulent. I felt quite proud of myself. Perhaps I could become a farmer, grow acres and acres of peas. Just a dream, of course. I haven't the land or the energy for farming. I'd better stick to my writing. But now, when I finish writing a story or this little vignette, for example, I feel like Jack climbing his beanstalk, except that I planted a pea and not a bean. I guess I'll never be a successful farmer. That is such a beautiful, beautiful little vignette, an essay, amusing, whatever you'd call it. So, and this is hardback too, so the feeling that you get when you read this is just amazing. So it has like several small topics on which he has his own perspective, his own musings and realizations. So that would be my second top 5 favorite books of all time, one of them. If you need a very sort of a juicy romance, I would recommend to you this, Call Me By Your Name by Andrè Aciman. I know there are a lot of books going around now, some by, I guess, Ali Hazelwood, some by Sally Rooney, some by Andrè Aciman, some, well, he writes very few books. Some, I guess, there are things like Love Hypothesis and Lessons in Chemistry. I guess those are all like little mushy love stories. I've not read them. You can go for them, but I am not an avid reader of romance genre. But this is one book that I read, and I read this almost 3 times, and I watched the film almost 9 times, and I cried every single time I watched the damn film. It's a film called Call Me By Your Name, which was adopted from this book that was written by Andrè Aciman. The film, I guess, was released back in 2017. I happened to watch it in 2021 for the first time, featuring Timothée Chalamet and Armie Hammer. I loved the film to the damn death of it, and I cried upon it for like 45 minutes straight, and I watched the damn film for 9 times. That's how much I loved it. That is just how much it hit the right spot, you know? So this is just a novel about a 17-year-old boy who's coming of age and discovering his own passions, physical, emotional, mental, and in some cases also spiritual. So he's just a small boy who has taken a liking for a summer guest that arrives in his house in northern Italy. This is set in northern Italy in the 1980s, 1984 to be more precise if I'm not wrong. And something kind of blooms in between these two characters. And although one of them kind of tries to evade the other, eventually it turns out to be a full-bloomed love affair. More than a love affair, a deep bond of trust, friendship, and discovering of each other's passions, you know. So this is a book that I'd highly recommend to every young adult at some point in their life, to have a deep understanding of love, at least some understanding of love and what it means to love. I guess this is one of the greatest books. And I see a lot of people talking about their breakups and moaning about their breakups, but I feel like one basic fallacy at the root of it all is the understanding that love is clinging. It is not. Love is not clinging or showing physical care for the other person. I remember one of the quotes that Krishna had said. He said, "Love frees you, and attachment bonds you. That is so true. If your love is real love, love says that I will do whatever it takes to make you happy, and if that means that I have to stay away from you or break up with you, good. If you're happy in that state, good for you. That is genuine love. Attachment says, I want you so that I can make myself happy. You get it? So that's a small snippet that I wanted to share. Anyway, the next book I would recommend strongly is Death by Sadhguru. In this book, he opens up a lot of aspects, unknown dimensions about death and the dead and the living and the dying. This is a must read. It's a little long. It's about 400 pages. Well, 330 pages. But if you really can go through each page with a little bit of patience and curiosity, this is the best book that I've ever read in my whole life. So therefore, my top 5 recommendations include this book. There's also Karma by Sadhguru, which is a great book, but I choose this over Karma because this is something else if you really happen to read it. And then this is the next book. Okay, should we talk about this or the other one? Let's talk about this. This is called Awareness by Osho. And again, in this book, he opens up about the 3-4 levels of awareness, from being aware first about your body, to then being aware about your mind, to then being aware of your emotions, to then being aware of your, let's say, just being aware, just the state of being. And then he opens up about the 4th state, or the state of Turiya. And he talks about awareness and meditation in a very deep sense in this book. I'd recommend everybody to go through this book at least once. I read this book twice. There are some books that you can't really get a grasp of once, just by reading it once. This is not one of those books. I definitely understood it the first time very well, but I felt like I needed to read this once more. There was something within me that was pulling me towards this book. So I'll read you the blurb, right? Underlying all meditation techniques, underlying all meditation techniques, including the martial arts, and in fact, underlying all great athletic performances, is a quality of being awake and present to a moment, a quality that Osho calls awareness. Eckhart Tolle, if you have ever heard his name, he calls it presence. J. Krishnamurti calls it choiceless awareness. Sadhguru just calls it being. That's all. Everybody has a different name for it. Once we can understand and identify this quality of awareness, we have the key to self-mastery in virtually every area of our lives. According to great masters like Lao Tzu or the Buddha, most of us move through our lives like sleepwalkers, never really present in what we are doing, never fully alert to our environment, and not even aware of what motivates us to do and say the things that we do. At the same time, all of us have experienced moments of awareness or awakening, to use another word, in extraordinary circumstances on the road, in a sudden and unexpected accident, when time seems to stop, or in situations that touch us deeply. Welcoming a new baby into the world for the first time, being with someone at the moment of death, when we are aware of every single movement, not just bodily movements, movement of thought, movement of emotion, movement of anything really, external and internal. When we are aware of every movement, every sound, every thought, awareness, says Osho, is the key to being self-directed, centered and free in every aspect of our lives. In this book, Osho teaches us how to live life more attentively, mindfully, meditatively, with love, caring and consciousness. Those are the 5 top recommendations of all time from me. I'll include a bonus and leave you with that. This is called A Book of Simple Living by Ruskin. I have already read this book. It is his musings from his life in Himachal Pradesh. in Himachal Pradesh, I don't know, in Mussoorie. And these are little vignettes, little realizations. I'll read you one small little poem that he has and leave you with that. As I walked home last night, I saw a lone fox dancing in the cold moonlight. I stood and I watched, then took the low road, knowing that the night was his by right. Sometimes when the words ring true, I am like a lone fox dancing in the morning dew. And my friend, I leave you with those 6 recommendations. I hope you have a good day, and I hope you found inspiration for picking up your next book. Thank you. I love you. I hope you fed yourself today. I hope you're keeping yourself hydrated today and you moved your body today. I love you. Thank you. See you in the next video. Until then, peace and love.